The voice of the Detroit Lions, Fox 2 Sports Director Dan Miller joining us now. And again, you can watch us live each and every day at 2 o'clock on the Fox2Detroit.com and the Fox Local app. Dan, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, fellas? How are you?
Hey, Mills.
Doing good, Dan. I'll tell you, before we look ahead, look back at that game against the Chargers, man. Was that one for the ages or what? What an exciting game to watch.
It was exhausting.
I can tell. I just have to say, I just love the camera in the booth.
Yep.
Yeah. When the Lions put that out there, Dan, it is great. I don't know how you feel about it. I love it. It is so good.
It's a little weird. You feel like people are kind of behind the curtain there, and it's you don't think about it during the game. You don't even realize it's there, and then you kind of look back afterwards, and you're like, I did that, and it. But I mean, that's always kind of the way I've been because I can't stand still. I was talking to Chase Horvitz, the Raiders guy, and he's like, I'm the same way. I got to talk with my hands. I'm jumping up and down and things like that, and it's just kind of the way it is. But no, it's listen, the fans enjoy it. Seemingly, I get
the players love it too, by the way.
Yeah, I've had some guys come up and talk about that, and look, that's ultimately you're doing it for the fans, and that's everything I do is to bring the game to them, and if that's another way to do it, that's great. And look, it only works if they're winning, and that's why it's working right now. So it's fun, and it's also cool because people get to see that there's other people in the booth that are really important in everything we do, and that's been nice too for people to see that.
Absolutely great to see my main man Mike Bratta in there. Dan, I thought last week it proved that this football team can win any different way. You want to have a shootout, they can win. You want to have a knockout fight like Tampa Bay, they could do it that way too. How did you characterize it?
Yeah, and that's a different way for them to win. I think that's a good point because if you think back to like both Seattle games last year and this year, the Miami game last year, the Philadelphia game last year, those were kind of shootouts, and they came out on the wrong end of those. And this was one that they ultimately won. And, somebody pointed out to me that they had given up touchdowns on their final 5 possessions to the opposition. I don't know how many teams in NFL history can say that they won giving up 5 consecutive touchdowns to close a game to the other team, but they figured out a way to do that. Inside that is, some defensive questions that you obviously have. But look, this league is about finding a way, regardless of what the situation is and what's presented to you. If you have to do it on offense, you do it. Special teams, you do it. Defense, you do it. And it's pretty rare that you're going to have all 3 clicking on all cylinders. So they just found a way with 2 out of the 3 working at a high level in this game to win it. So, yeah, I mean, look, Ryan, every game that you win is one you put in your back pocket that you can lean on later and say, we found a way to get this done, whether it's a tight defensive game, a game you have to come from behind in the fourth quarter where you find yourself down or whatever. Everything, and in particular for a team that's got so many young players, I think it's just really important that they understand the many different ways that you can get a game. So when you find yourself there in the fourth quarter of a game, you're comfortable.
D-Mills, talk about that offensive line, man. They were ranked Pro Football Focus #1 offensive line in the league right now. Just talk about the difference in when they're all in there. You see Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, everybody's having success. Jared Goff, that offensive line, how important are they to the success of the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, didn't like seeing Jonah Jackson not at practice today, according to some of the guys that were tweeting. I wasn't out there today, but a number of guys said he missed, so we'll see what's up with him. But look, Braylon, it's the face of the team.
Yeah.
It is what they've built this team around. There's 3 #1 picks on that line, and they have put everything into it. And an All-Pro who was a 3rd-round pick, Pro Bowler, I should say, that was a 3rd-round pick. And look, Graham's a former draft pick there as well. So it is what makes this team go. And it's what's given this team balance really for the first time since Barry was there for any consistent period of time. And it's allowed Jared Goff. I mean, guys, look at that last play on 4th down. Look how long Jared had, because he had to go through his progression and come back again. And it's an extra beat in there that line gave him. It's not on rhythm. It's another beat that he needed to throw that ball and complete it. to Laporta, and that's that offensive line. And man, when they're clicking, I told somebody the other day, it's like you're walking into the party with the baddest dude in school and nobody's going to mess with you. And I think they just feel like when they walk on the field with that group intact, they have a ton of confidence.
You brought up Jared Goff playing behind this offensive line. We talk about him being a quarterback that you can win with. That's been the kind of adage for Jared Goff since he was with the St. Louis Rams and then the Los Angeles Rams. But he's starting to turn into that quarterback that I think you can win with. But because of as well, you talk about the audible to play for the 75-yard touchdown, David Montgomery. I think he started to take that next step, Dan. Am I seeing this correct?
Yeah, I do, and I think really you can go back to last year when he went on that long run without any interceptions. And I think the biggest thing that Jared does that is so impressive is now that this offense is built out and you have a ton of different weapons that can work, he just takes whatever the defense gives him, and they got to pick their poison. I mean, look at that final drive. First play, final drive. At some point you're going to need probably a chunk, and they get it on the first play, and they get it to Khalif Raymond. And, that's the kind of thing that used to happen to the Lions. They'd be in a tight game, and all of a sudden the number 4 receiver on the other team, rips off some big play. That's a backbreaker, man. And Khalif, as people saw, is lightning fast. And people saw that down the left sideline. They have a ton of trust in him. And I asked Jared on Monday, I said, when you broke the huddle, did you think that's what was going to be open? He said, yeah, I did. They really believed that was going to free him up. And once he had the football in his hand, he was off and running it. I just think, look, Jared's playing at an extremely high level. There's very few quarterbacks since the middle of last year that are playing better than him. It's a handful at most, and most of them are probably just holding court with him and staying even. He's not. They're not winning with him. They're winning because of him in a lot of cases.
Yes.
And that's a huge thing for this team. And he's playing with a ton of confidence right now.
Hey, Dan, you think Dan Campbell learned a little from that Seattle game, took it into this game? Let's face it, we all wanted them to go for the win against Seattle, and the way they settled for that field goal. This time, he's like, I'm not giving this team back the ball. Is that something that he learned, or is that something that he just figured out in this game?
Maz, that's a good point, and I didn't like the clock management against Seattle, but I'm going to take you back further. I honestly believe that a lot of this is off that Minnesota game last year that they lost in Minnesota. Okay. And Dan Campbell, after the game, was very emotional, saying that's on me. He settled for, I think it was a 54-yard field goal instead of going for a 4th and 4 that could have iced the game. And at that point, he kind of gave up control of the game with the unit that I think that he trusts the most. And I think, and look, that's not to say that the Seattle game doesn't play into it. I just think that was such a discernible moment for Dan Campbell when you saw the emotion that he had, that he felt he had let his team down by, for lack of a better way of putting it, playing too conservatively and not putting the game in his guys' hands. I think that's what he did in this case. I think he knew he had a defense that was struggling. The idea of giving the ball back to Herbert was not enticing at all. And he trusts that offense big time. He trusts that line. He trusts that quarterback. He trusts the guys catching the passes. And he just, at that point said, we're not giving up control of this thing. If we're going to go down, we're going to go down because we didn't make a play, not because they did. And I think that that's ultimately what went into that. But I think to your larger point, yes, I think this is a growth in him that has been from experience that more often than not, I think if he's got the ball in his hands, he wants to try to finish that thing himself.
Absolutely. And how about the streak that they're on? A 15-4. 15-4 is top 2 in the NFL. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles and this team.
15 and 4.
15 and 4. 2 losses, 8-2, and now 7-2. It's amazing to me. And I told the guys last night, I went home and I watched the game again last night, and I'm sick. But I can't stop smiling watching that offense. I won't talk about the defense with you because I'm having a good time. But I'm having a great time, man. 15-4.
And a couple things there. I watched the game on the flight back again myself, and it was enjoyable. A little bit easier to watch it when you know the outcome, but I think it was. Look, what it tells you, Maz, is they're good, and this isn't a fluke, and they've done it over an extended period of time now. There's a lot of work left to do this year. They got a lot they have to keep doing, but it just tells you if they play to their capabilities and handle their business, that what they're capable of doing. But the cool thing within that is it's not just like they're winning at home. They're winning, at Kansas City, at Green Bay twice, at Tampa against a pretty good team. It's never easy to go all the way out to the West Coast and win a game. And look, that's a pretty good football team with a lot of good players on it that they just beat. They may be 4-5, but that Chargers team had won 2 in a row with a hot quarterback, and he figured out a way to beat them. So there's a lot to like about what they're doing right now. But I think the most important thing is understanding that you have to keep doing it, because the Vikings apparently aren't going anywhere. And winning that division is everything to get that home playoff game, whether it's 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, whatever it is. They just have to keep grinding along and figuring out every week how to get it. And I think that's one of the things within this streak has been the consistency. Outside of the Carolina game, it's been pretty impressive the way that they've been able to week after week after week come out and figure out a way not just to win but to play pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Dan, Lions brought in a couple of vets yesterday. Bruce Irvin on the defensive side, Michael Schofield, the former Michigan offensive lineman, played for the Broncos for a lot of years. Bruce Irvin, what should reasonable expectations for this guy be?
Well, Campbell said they worked him out yesterday, and he looked good. He's 36. He had 3.5 sacks for Seattle last year. Before that, I don't think he had a sack since 2019. So he's played sparingly, but it's a free roll of the dice. It's a free look. He's on the practice squad right now. Based on what Campbell said today, he said he's not in football shape. I find it hard to believe that we would see him this week, but maybe they think he could play, 8-9 snaps, something like that. And that's probably what you're looking for, is no more than 15 snaps a game or something like that. And if he can be impactful on 2 of those, that's huge. If he can find some way to get to the quarterback, which he has historically been able to do. So, look, I don't know that I have great expectations for a 36-year-old guy that's coming in, after not playing with anybody this year and kind of jumping back into it. But there's no downside here for a team that needs a pass rush to see what he can do, get him out there and see what kind of shape he can get in. And look, Schofield, we've seen the value of veteran offensive linemen for this team, and you're getting down to some critical games here where to have a guy that understands what snaps are in critical situations and in big situations is a key thing. And in particular, not knowing what the situation is with Jonah, I don't know how significant that is or isn't. The more guys you have and the more options you have, the better off you're going to be.
Hey, Dan, last one for you. It sounded like Justin Fields is going to be active this week. At least that's what they're planning for. And the Lions have had trouble with running quarterbacks. It feels like an automatic win, but Dan Campbell was like, hey, man, there's no such thing in this league.
Yeah.
Nah, man, there's no automatic wins. Look, this team, they've won 3 of their last 6, so they've kind of figured things out a little bit. He has given them problems. I think it's interesting, if you go back to the last game they played last year, the second game against the Bears, the Lions had a really interesting defensive alignment for a lot of that game. They had 5 defensive linemen on that line because of Fields for most of that game, and to take the run away, both in their running game and then with the quarterback as well. I'd be real interested to see if Aaron Glenn dials that up again, because we haven't seen a lot of that outside of that game against Fields. It looked like something they kind of cooked up just for him. I want to see if they do that again, but he's been a little bit different this year. He hasn't been running as much when he played. They've been trying, I think, to throw the ball more downfield and get some of these guys involved. DJ Moore makes a huge difference. He's a hell of a player for them. That's a great get. Cole Kmet is a big-time problem out there at tight end, so look, nothing's going to be easy about this game, in particular trying to corral one of the most explosive quarterbacks in this league. I think the obvious thing you want to do against him is make him beat you throwing the ball, make him prove that he can do that, see if you can force him to make a mistake somewhere along the line. But he's an edge-of-your-seat guy, because on every third down he can break your heart if you leave something open for him. He's going to find a way to get to the sticks.
All right, Dan, thanks so much for the time, my friend. Check Dan out, Fox 2,
Thanks,
Game
Dan.
Day Live, 10 a.m. on Sunday on Fox 2, the game after that. Dan, thanks so much, my friend.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you.
You
Have a
got
good day,
it.
Mel.
You got it. Have a great day.